Without these sampling tubes, we would not be able, and we were not going to be able, to start our mass testing.
The consignment had an additional 500,000 three-ply masks that the government will prioritize for frontline workers, and 76,000 N95 masks were also delivered Friday morning. The equipment also included 4,000 pieces of shoe covers, as well as 300 pieces of static shoes for the frontline workers. The government says it has also procured additional ventilators awaiting shipment.
There is another flight leaving tomorrow on Saturday to China to also bring medical supplies, and there will be many more.
The Ministry of Health has already trained the aviation teams who jet in and out of the country to collect medical supplies, as well as laying down protocols to be followed.
We have developed protocols with them on how to travel, on how to quarantine themselves, the crew. When they come and when they go, they know what to do. 12
more cases were reported today, with the numbers now at 246.
5, for example, are hotel workers, and another 4 from our sampling, from our contact tracing capability.
In comparison with other global nations with a similar infection curve as Kenya, the government says the situation could turn bumpy depending on the outcome of the mass testing.
Looking at what is happening around the world, we have reason to be concerned, we have reason to be prepared.
The government is targeting quarantine centers, hotels, isolation centers, and hospitals to first undergo the testing. In Mombasa, the ministry is deploying 1,000 testing kits to the Kenya Ports Authority that has also recorded a good number of positive cases in the coast region. A total of 12,000 testing kits is earmarked for deployment for phase 1 of the mass testing, with Kibera slums identified as the first urban settlement to face the test.
We have introduced, for example, 107 water points. We have also closed down Badali and Kipevu clinics to make sure they are properly fumigated, to make sure that we do not have any further transmission.
In addition, the government from Monday will begin another round of inspections of all isolation centers in the country to establish their capacity and readiness to hold infected persons who will be identified during the nationwide mass testing.
As you know, what lies ahead is a challenge. And everybody knows that.
Already, mass testing has started for frontline workers, with the government already earmarking priority areas. Counties that have already been marked as hotspots lead the pack. Stephen Leto, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
And the government has extended the quarantine period for all persons being held at 5 quarantine centers in the country. Health Director General Dr. Patrick Amoth says the individuals held at the 5 facilities did not maintain what he called, quote-unquote, optimal social distance, and instead had close contact and interactions. Makori Ongechi reports.
The statement directed to the managers of quarantine facilities in the 5 affected centers is to ensure an immediate extension of 14 more days for those under the government's mandatory quarantine. Those in Kenyatta University, KMTC hostels of Nairobi, Kano and Nairobi MG, Kenya Water Institute and Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology will now spend an additional 2 weeks in quarantine to determine whether they will be discharged. Health Ministry Director General Dr. Patrick Amoth says the ministry established that the individuals held at the 5 facilities did not maintain optimal social distance and instead had close contact and interactions. He says, and I quote, "After thorough evaluation of circumstances, these factors facilitate transmission and cross-infection, and therefore it is impossible to determine whether all those quarantined in the facilities are actually safe to be released into the general public." On Wednesday this week, 21 people in mandatory quarantine at the Kenyatta University Center held protests over their continued stay at the facility despite posting negative COVID-19 results. The group, including the over 250 others at KMTC, claimed they were being held in quarantine after the expiry of their mandatory 14 days of isolation, yet they are unable to pay the bills for their stay.
This is the 3rd time government has extended quarantine. There's one thing that remains constant: at the poor Kenyans' individual cost. Where are these Kenyans going to get the money from? The assumption that maybe Kenyans arriving can be able to afford for this program is actually misplaced. Most of the persons arriving, some of them are students, some of them are persons who lost their jobs and who felt coming back home could be a more safe and convenient place to be during this pandemic.
Several police officers were deployed and forced them back into the facility. Those quarantined have been directed to observe all the directives in social distance, hygiene measures, and to limit interactions during the period after which a repeat testing for COVID-19 shall be undertaken. With the number of the COVID-19 cases in the country rising each day, the government seems to extend its operations in ensuring that the past regulations have been adhered to effectively. Makori Ongechi, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
And it is emerging that nearly half of the COVID-19 cases in the country were identified through contact tracing. Now, the intricate process involves a multi-agency team comprising the National Intelligence Service, Directorate of Criminal Investigations, Public Health officers, and paramedics. Hassan Mugambi has been tagging along the teams and got to witness several people being taken into quarantine as a result of contact tracing. Here's that exclusive report.
A rush against time. This E-Plus ambulance has been dispatched to a residential area in Nairobi. In the Friday afternoon traffic and congestion in the area, the ambulance makes its way. Upon arrival, detectives from the DCI, the National Intelligence Service, and public health officers are already here. The suspected cases have already been briefed. When they finally got to this Nairobi residential area, the suspected cases have been put in the ambulance right behind me, and where they will be now presented before Mbagathi or Kenyatta University hospitals to be tested. Then they will be placed in quarantine if at all they are found to be negative. The suspected cases are advised to pack personal effects, as it will be at least 14 days before they are back home. They are suspected to have extensively interacted with a positive case. But just how did the officers find themselves here? The contact tracing exercise begins with an interview with a positive case, who reveals to the authorities people they might have come into contact with. The National Intelligence Service then tracks the contacts to a precise location before DCI detectives and public health officers are deployed.
And once he's identified, then he's handed over to us, where me and my colleague, we are in full protective equipment. We take the patient, and also now we again communicate with the public health officer on site, who directs us on which quarantine facility we are going to take this patient.
And it is here that they don PPE. Nothing is left to chance, as they are unsure whether the cases to be picked are positive or not.
We ensure when we reach at the point of picking them that we give them masks, and then we also give them gloves. Now, when we get these very specific patients, because now they are suspected COVID patients, we have a clear procedure on how we evacuate them.
The exercise that mostly takes place at night sometimes encounters challenges, as the PPE frightens most of those being picked up.
You need to be very, very reassuring when handling them. Of course, you have to keep some few meters away from them, but you need to be very, very careful as not to stigmatize them more.
Those picked up today were driven to the Kenyatta University Referral Hospital, where they will be tested and subsequently quarantined or treated depending on the outcome. Almost 100 out of the 246 positive cases in the country were identified through contact tracing. Hassan Mugambi, Citizen TV.
We are taking a very short break and we'll be back with more. Remember, tonight we are talking to a vlogger, a lady who tested positive for COVID-19, who has since taken into vlogging as she documents her journey after testing positive for COVID-19 and demystifies some of the half-truths around COVID-19. We'll be talking to her very shortly on Friday night. Lots more coming up. Stay with us.
Kambia ile injali niko ni magoti tu nimeumizwa. Nitatumia fix, sitachukua P3.
Curfews, quarantines, and staying at home. Why is domestic violence on the rise? That's coming up after this break.
Soon, we will exchange our vows with pomp and glow. But until we do, please stay at home, stop the spread, and save lives.
Festive. Here are benefits to you on the resealable tape found on Festive Bread. It's easy to open and close for you and your whole family. No need for a storage container, since the bread is sealed and intact as is. The resealable tape keeps the bread fresh and also improves hygiene. No more tearing with the resealable tape on Festive Bread. Festive Bread, dedicated to making quality, tasty and healthy bread. Open it, pick it, reseal it. DPL Festive Cares.
Save cash by buying Pampers at reduced prices. The Jumbo Pack has reduced from $1,750 to $1,400. The Value Pack is now $720 from $990. And the Carry Pack is $199 from $220. Save, save, save with Pampers today.
Oya ni aje, mino Jonte Fresh. Mi ndio nimetambulika hii Gikomba yote sekta ya manguo. Jumio transform nguo ordinary za mtush zenye ziuka mna hii harufu ya bail into the freshest igikosi yote. Siri ni hii Ariel mpya ya pink. Na kusho mtush zinang'ara kung'ara kushinda kamera. So clean, so fresh. Makastoma unaisana na hii story. Ninatumia Ariel touch of down mpya tu.
There's no debate. Home is best. If you must pay for deliveries, use your NCBA debit card. Stay home, stay safe. NCBA, go for it.
Since late last year, the coronavirus COVID-19 has emerged as a serious healthcare threat. This is an infection that has gone global and no one has been spared. The government, through the Ministry of Health, has put in measures to keep Kenyans safe against COVID-19, which is currently rampant around the world, with new confirmed infections and death cases daily. Such sanitization and screening of visitors at this border post and across every entry point in the country is very vital in preventing the spread of the disease in the country.
I'm very happy about the screenings that are going on in Tanzania and Kenya. I think it's very proactive that you're thinking about stopping it at the border so that it does not spread.
It is scary that a single cough here can lead to an outbreak of epic proportions. In order to prevent that, the government has instituted measures to keep Kenyans safe.
The facility has all the equipments you need, from handling a basic patient up to ICU setting.
However, you also have a role to play in preventing spread of infections.
Citizen responsibility is the key to the success of this initiative and these measures. Let's all do what we have to do individually. And this is how we are going to defeat this disease.
It's just our general hygiene, okay? And that now means at workplaces, we should ensure that our work surfaces are clean.
Always ensure that nimefanya proper sanitation ya mikono. Every time na board matatu, lazima ni sanitize mikono.
We have faced many severe challenges as a nation, and we have always found a way to rise above them. COVID-19 is no different, and we will overcome the pandemic. Stop coronavirus. Follow all directives from the Ministry of Health. Wash your hands properly.